Last episode, we talked about the B movie and hypersignification. Let's see what you had to say. Alice Powell, you get, and I'm frustrated with myself that I didn't remember this, full credit for inspiring the episode. Alice tweeted at us, at me, a couple weeks ago, and basically just asked, like, what is going on? And I was like, what do you mean, what's going on with, and then I went to YouTube and did a search for B-movie, and my mind was blown, and then it took us a couple months to make a video. So Alice, full credit, thank you. SaiyanHeretic and a bunch of other people wanted to know about the audience retention metrics for this episode to see what percentage of people actually watched through the whole thing. So we'll take some screenshots, we'll make an imager gallery or something, we'll put some links in the description. But essentially, it seems like what happened is that basically like through hour 4, we were at about 1% of people kept watching. But then after, hold on, I have it right here. After probably like about 4.5 hours, or like the 5-hour mark, we start to steadily decline until at the end, it's roughly 0.5% of people had watched the entire thing. There are 2 bumps though. There is a 1% bump at about the 75% mark, which I think is probably people just like clicking to, you know, like where you might expect there to be some change, you know, at the 3/4 mark, just to see if we were serious and we actually did it, and then learning that we were in fact serious. And then we get up to about 2% at the very end, which is, I assume, people just, again, checking to see whether or not we did the whole movie, which, you know, as you know, the end sort of got cut off in the first version, and maybe also to see the end card. So yeah, some brave souls out there. Kudos to you. A bunch of people also pointed out that we missed some Bs and some B instances and Bs. We purposefully did not include the word Bs. No plurals were included. And we, I think, missed every instance where the word B was its own sentence, which accounted for, I think, maybe like 15, Morgan, was it like 15 or 20? Yeah, so like there were 15 or 20 instances of B as an interjection or something that we did miss. So yeah, thank you to everybody who did the hard work of letting us know exactly where all of the instances of B that we missed were. Todesnuss, or perhaps Todesnuss, says that instead of because internet, they feel as though the feeling that these videos give, that technical memes capture, is wow, with no punctuation and all lowercase, which I would love to repeat. Chef kiss hand motion, internet gold. Scarpalm on the subreddit goes into a little bit more detail than we did comparing technical memes to fine art, and makes a comparison to Christian Marclay's 24-hour clock and Doug Gordon's 24-hour Psycho, which are both pieces of video art that sort of are very technical in nature. They took a lot of work to create this monolithic piece that unfolds over a huge amount of time. Sort of once you get it, you get it, and it's a practice of sitting with it and trying to kind of just watching it unfold. And I think that this is a really interesting point, and I think the way Scarpalm approaches it is useful. What I would ask, or the thing that I like to think about in this situation is, you know, what is it about the technical meme as it exists on YouTube that stops us from appreciating it as this kind of thing? And I think that there is something that does prevent us from appreciating these works the way that we would appreciate something like a 24-hour Psycho. And I think that, you know, we've talked about this before in other Idea Channel episodes, that art is an experience. It doesn't matter really what it is. It's a sort of emerging thing that comes from a relationship between a person and a thing. It isn't necessarily a thing itself, but that I do feel as though there is something that stops us from having that art experience with a lot of these things. And in an episode a while ago, I think I talked about like my lemon squeezer, and the idea of distance, and that in order to have this art experience, you have to gain a little distance. And I think that the Christian Marclay, the Doug Gordon, it being presented to you in a gallery or in a museum, you are encouraged to find that distance, and that you are not encouraged to find that distance in a YouTube watch page. And I wonder whether or not taking these videos and framing them in a different way, literally just on the internet, like on another web page, you frame them differently. Do you have a different experience of them? And I don't know. Maybe something I'll experiment with. Mechroid points out that there might be something of a, like, almost technological determinism to the popularity of technical memes and maybe the generally and the B-movie genre specifically, because they sort of take advantage of or benefit from the way the YouTube recommendation algorithm works, and points out that after you've watched one or two, your recommended videos are just flooded with videos that are titled, at least to start with, the B movie, but. And so there is a way that this could inflate the presence and importance and like psychological presence of this idea, and that would both encourage a larger audience to view them and therefore more people to make them, which is something I didn't think about. I think it's a great point. Stephen Webb writes a really, I think, insightful comment that is just worth reading if you have the time. Links to this one and all the others in the doobly-doo, where he talks about two things that I kind of want to just focus on, which is first, a kind of restatement of one of the points that we made in our older playlist video about YouTube poop, that a lot of the reasons that people might make something like these B-movie butt videos or technical memes in general is that you kind of get cynical, feeling like you are force-fed this popular but largely unremarkable media. And I realize I made fun of the B-movie. A lot of people really like the B-movie. That's great. I'm glad that you like it. I do think that it is not remarkable, but that's maybe another conversation for another day. But that when you are confronted with this media constantly, like we talked about in the YouTube poop video, you feel force-fed, and so you digest it and then you poop it out as something else, as a way to kind of deal with the amount of media saturation there is. Stephen Webb also talks about these kinds of videos as a sort of impressionism, which I think is such a great way to look at this, that in consuming or viewing or even just being subjected to the media landscape, the operations that are taken by people to make these videos sort of result in an impression of that landscape or of this media as maybe just a kind of like meaningless tick the boxes, get a result and put it out there formula, which I love that. I love that idea. Robert Williams gets to something so well that we, I think, tried to express in both the comment responses for our Overwatch video and tried to express in another way in the B-movie video, which is, because internet is not a reason, it is permission.